A number of people that pick up here, so thank you very much. Also thanks to Frost and the whole team here, Vince and Carlo, for having me here tonight. Funny enough, actually, about 6 years ago or so, we shared the office with Frost tonight, so we had 4 desks down there. We were in this office when we were much smaller than we are now, and then we stood there in the infancy of, I guess, what we're doing now. I'm talking about experience thinking tonight. Everyone probably wonders what the hell is that. It's nothing entirely new. Many of you guys are probably practicing it every day, intuitively, maybe not so intuitively. What I want to do today is maybe help you understand that territory a little bit better and hopefully show you ways that you can use experience thinking in what you do. Before we start, can I ask anyone who works in the marketing communication industry, you guys? Okay, who works outside the marketing communication industry? When I say that, I mean everything from advertising, branding, design. Oh, the hands are going up. Okay. So I'm talking about the wider sense of communication and marketing. So a lot of people here. That's good to know. Just a little bit about me. Carlos probably said everything, or most of it already. Most of you guys probably recognize my accent. I'm from Europe. I'm from Austria. Moved to England and then studied there, worked there for quite a while, and then came out here about 12 years ago and worked for an agency here, and then started to play about 10 years ago, pretty much. So it's been an interesting journey. My background is strategy planning, so I worked as a strategist most of my life. And then it evolved. When you run your own business, you suddenly have to worry about other things, and you learn about new things, etc. Before we sort of get into the detail of it, I thought I'd start with an analogy. And the reason I've asked you about the marketing communications industry as a wider sense is, I believe there's sort of two. If you had to split it into 2 halves, there's 2 really basic, different approaches to how we do our work. And the first approach, I would call it the firework approach. I think we all know what a firework is and how it works. Usually you spend a lot of money to put a lot of things up into the air. You get a big crowd, everyone is looking at it, everyone is excited about it, everyone goes, wow, this is absolutely amazing. So you have a lot of light, a lot of heat, a lot of color, a lot of noise. And it looks absolutely great. But what happens afterwards is it comes down and the money runs out and things stop. And when you think of the communication industry where it's been, it's very much focused and functioned as this model. So take a TV scene, for example, or take print advertising, or take any sort of traditional communication. It's all been about, let's create a good creative solution, it's pay for media, let's get it out there. As long as it's out there, it will have an impact. The moment it stops, it kind of starts to come down, quite literally. I think there's another way, probably over the last 10 years, that's been growing more and more, which is a new model. And I call it the bonfire model. And what happens there is it usually starts quite small and it requires a lot of skill. You start with little bonfire. You might be really lonely at the beginning, and with some help of other people, it might just get bigger. It might get really big. People start talking. People get think about a bonfire. A bonfire is built on socialist action. It's built on storytelling. It's built on inviting people around the fire. And then the more people you have, the more people talk, and things get bigger and bigger. So what that in a way means is there's two ways of looking at it. One is the typical disruption approach, as I said earlier, and it's a traditional advertising approach. And the other one is what we call the engagement approach. And that's what the bonfire model does. It starts small. It takes a while. When you look at it as a graph, one would be it spikes and it comes down, and the other one would just go slowly. It will go up and up and up and up and up. And we all know about social media. Social media is a very good example for the bonfire approach. It starts something really small. It starts to create a little community, and it starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And suddenly it's massive. And then people come to you and say, "I want that." You know, the nature of that is though it's not that easy because it's crafted. It starts small. It's going to be of value. There's two big things that have an impact why I think there's a shift towards the engagement model. And I'm not saying the disruption model doesn't work. All I'm saying is those two things have to work with each other. The first one is, and this is probably a big underestimation of the amount of media channels that we have right now. But when you think back, 20, 30 years ago, there were probably 5 key channels. So when you had a message 30 years ago, you put this message onto 5 channels, onto TV, print, radio, and outdoor, and everyone will see it. Now, you think of media channels, we have cash machines, toilet paper, we've got pretty much anything that you can think of is becoming a media channel. So to get your message across is getting harder and harder. Therefore, the disruption model is much harder to implement. The other big change, the other big thing that we're seeing is transparency. And particularly over the last 10 years with the increase of, I guess, companies opening up, but also consumers more and more participating in the dialogue with brands, transparency is a big thing. And what that means is, what you say as a brand, in the past it was quite easy to control a message. You put your message of, this washing powder is the washer's whitest onto 5 channels, and people will start to believe it if you do it over and over again. Now, people will comment, people will talk about it, people will share their real experience, and they say, this is bullshit. I've tried it, it doesn't work, And people go into the supermarket, look at their phone, when they look at the washing powder, and they find out, actually, no one likes it, I'm not going to buy it. And that's the reality. So transparency is increasing. And with increasing transparency, that means, well, that fireworks model doesn't work that well anymore. And people engage, whether you like it or not. So I guess what's happening, and I drew this very scientifically, is what we say is becoming less important, and what we do is becoming more important. It's a bit like a relationship. There's these guys that always talk about things, and there's guys who don't talk about things, they just do things. And over time, who do you respect more? You respect the people who do things, because the other one is just words. So with brands, it's very similar, or with companies, or businesses, or yourself, it's very similar. Actions speak more than words. Your parents probably told you that a long time ago. So what does it mean? So it means for brands, historically it was all about, let's tell people about it. Let's, you have a, product and you talk to people about it. I think where we're getting now, where we're getting closer now is, let's, there's this behavioral element to it. It's about what brands do. So there's this shift of thinking where you can go, well, why don't we do something and then talk about what we do, as opposed to just talk about what we want other people to think about us. And when you think of the big campaigns that we all like, or that have been, heard in media or in awards or whatever, that's what they've been doing. To promote an island, you could simply create an ad and say, look at this island, it's absolutely amazing. But no, they effectively created a project, and this project was the best job in the world project. And as a result, they advertised for the best job in the world, not for the island. The island became part of the social fabric and part of the dialogue in a much more believable way. Same thing with space or the Forest Island. So when I talk about experience thinking, what I mean with that is you start thinking about the experience and you start thinking about behavior before you start thinking about communication. And there's a simple diagram that I've stolen from Ferris Jacob, who some of you might know. He's been using this really well, and I was very inspired by it because I think it's a really nice summary of, I guess, the communication and marketing landscape where we are. Historically, it's all been about this. It's all been about telling people. And I think when we are in design or when we are in advertising, that's what we do. We come up with a message. That's every creative brief has what's the key message? What are we trying to communicate? And the challenge is, as I said earlier, to get that message across and to get people to believe that message. So that alone is actually not doing the job anymore. So there's a couple of other things that are happening now that I think are becoming really interesting. One is content. Content is very much around entertainment and information, so entertaining and informing people. But then, and this is more the behavioral side of the spectrum, is tools and actions. And this is where what I meant before with what do brands actually do. So what tools do they create that make my life easier? It's not just about the brand itself, it's about what do we do for me? So helping people. And then actions, what are we doing together? What can we do that excites me or that makes me interested? Now, traditionally, the thinking was, you start here and then you do something. And I remember probably 5-6 years ago, we got briefed from advertising agencies and said, here's a TVC, create an experience that is like that. So in other words, we looked at the characters in the TVC and we dressed them up like them and we go down the street and we do some stuff that looks like that, and that was great work, The problem with that was, it wasn't authentic and it wasn't meaningful and consumers didn't really connect with that. So when I talk about experience thinking, it's doing it the other way around. It's starting with behavior first, and then using marketing communications to talk about what you do. So I'm not saying this is the better way, all I'm saying is it's another way. And I'll show you 3 examples in terms of how I think this can be done. So let's talk about tools first. Many of you will probably seen the Commonwealth Bank app that help people find property. Now you would think, hang on a second, it's a bank. Why would a bank create an app that helps people find property? A bank is supposed to give mortgages, so real estate agents should do that. Now, well, when you think about, again, the experience people have with a bank or around property, it's not just buying a mortgage, it's actually about, before I get a mortgage, I need to actually find a property for which I need a mortgage. So if I, as a bank, start to own the relationship with the consumer, in the early stages, when they're still looking for a property, I start building that relationship very early. And I can then take that relationship when I want to sell them a mortgage. So that's why they created an app that helps people find property, and then they help them find a mortgage. Surprise. So, but that cost a lot of money to develop. It was a reward-giving app. No immediate return, but it was a tool that enabled people to make their life easier, truly easier. And it was actually an amazing app, and I've used it, and it's actually an amazing app. So true benefit for the user. And what it does is it starts building a relationship, it starts engaging, not just disrupting. This is another example for Alex, the credit card. Again, they try to focus on small business owners, and traditionally what would have happened,
Especially I want to get water free or 10% off. We are just thrilled and jacked and ready.
There are thousands of other small businesses out there. They're all walking the same journey that I am.
Come on, guys, let's go.
Small Business Saturday, November 26th. Join the day.
I don't know if that helped to overcome the high fees of American Express, but certainly you can see the approach was different. The approach was, let's actually do something for the community, and let's actually work with the community to create something that is of value to them. Another example is Museum of Me. I think we all know, you've probably seen Museum of Me, and you can launch an Intel, or you can launch a processor one way, or you can launch it through an online experience like that. I think it's just a really clever way to create a highly engaging, highly sophisticated experience online that is truly connected to your product, and told a great story. And who doesn't like themselves and like to see their own world and celebrate themselves? So very clever. So let's talk about action. This is a project we've been working with on Volkswagen. Volkswagen launched a new Polo, and in Australia, the Polo was really a secondary product. I mean, Volkswagen in Australia is known for the Golf, and that's dominating the market. But the brand itself, and particularly other models, didn't have a lot of credibility, particularly under the 18 to 24-year-old segment. So the obvious ad campaign went out and all that happened, but Volkswagen realized we need to actually do something that proves, as a foreign car brand, why we can substantiate our product and our offer. So we worked with them on doing something, and the approach was quite simple. We created a game based on does anyone know Marco Polo? The Marco Polo game, where you play the pool, etc. So we created a game called Marco Polo, but it happened online. So Facebook became the central platform for that. And Marco became a fictitious character who lived in mine. He was the guy who kind of knows everything in town, across all the different capital cities. And he would say, hey guys, this new band is in town, who wants to go? Marco. And the first person would say, Polo. Would be picked up in a car, taken with their mates to their venue. They would get AAA passes, go with the band, and get the full experience brought to you by Volkswagen. And the car became an enabler of that experience. So in other words, he embedded the car into a normal day-to-day experience to give that audience an authentic product experience that actually lives up to the promises that they made. And then we used all of that to amplify and talk about it in the real world. With ASOS, another project, quite interestingly, when you think about Australia, funny enough, we are furthest ahead in the time zones in the world. But usually when things, big launches happen, we always the last. And ASOS, being a new brand in Australia, had a challenge of gaining credibility in Australia and actually connecting with that youth, young audience. So we said, what if we could turn this around? What if ASOS could kind of change all of that and actually, rather than launching their collection in New York or in Paris or in London, we launched the collection in Australia. So Australia is going to be first. So actually doing something totally different from what they would normally do. So we worked with them on launching a collection here and giving Australian consumers to be the first. It's a very connected audience. To be the first to actually experience the product, to see the product, and to buy the product. And all of that was then initiated as a global launch. In terms of content, again, when you think about the relationship between action and content, very often what happens here is that you're doing something that you can actually then document and then use content to amplify. There's one example for Tourism Victoria, and it's a product that everyone knows quite well, which is the Melbourne product. Particularly females, females in Sydney are one of the biggest audiences for Melbourne, for Tourism Victoria. And who of you hasn't been to Melbourne? two guys, all the girls have been. That's the problem, or that was the problem for Tourism Victoria. Everyone's been there, everyone knows what Melbourne is, everyone has an association with that. So how do you get people to go down there for a weekend and have a romantic weekend in the romantic capital or in the creative capital of Australia? So what we did was we looked at, okay, what could we do to then create a story that we think can amplify through traditional media. So we did some research and we found out that there is more creative men in Victoria or in Melbourne than we are in Sydney. So we thought that's great. So if that's the creative capital of Australia and there's more creative men, and we want to get women to go down there, let's marry up the creative man of Melbourne with the Sydney girls. So we identified 8 city-siders, Sydney girls, who had their own sort of media relationships and audiences, etc. And they were all single, obviously. And we got a matchmaker on board who then started to, build the relationships between Sydney girls and Melbourne guys. And then we started to use and accumulate those relationships in a little event to whereby we took them down to actually experience the Melbourne product as they would never have done before. And then we used all of that content and sent it to social media and print to amplify all of that and get it out there to everyone else so that all the other girls also realize, hi, I'm single and I want to have a creative date. I want to go to the creative capital of Australia. We seeded the whole thing with some virals that went out there with stereotypical Sydney men, and you can see them. They are, they're muscle guy, they're banker, they're surfer dude. So you'll probably recognize them, and the girls will say, yeah, I've met them before, I want to go to Melbourne as well. So there's a short video for you.
When they see these guns flying in that code.
Well, I'm glad. How I can be? Hey, pick me. Get me.
Yeah, it's my girl.
There isn't big
Victoria, trying to help girls fighting the man recession. Now, what's going on here?
Well, I found out about this news site called melbournematch.com. They say that it's to help Sydney women fight what they call the man recession in Sydney.
Is there a man shortage in Sydney? Girls, come on, give us a call, let us know.
According to Melbourne's tourism experts, Sydney is in the grip of a man recession.
I think it's definitely a man drought in Sydney.
Definitely a man drought.
Definitely a man drought.
Well, we've got the 3 Fs, we've got the food, we've got the fashion, and now we've obviously got the fellas.
It's called Melbourne Match, and it's all Tourism Victoria. There were some high-profile Sydney singletons down in Melbourne.
To be honest, the girls were fantastic, all the guys were lovely, and to go to Melbourne for a weekend, we saw Dali, stayed at the Crown, the whole organisation behind the trip was brilliant. I'm a big fan, I love Melbourne.
Oh, I love the goodness. Melbourne is a romantic city.
That's exactly right.
I've got another example, and this is a very different audience. It's a teenage audience. And I don't know if you've heard about Saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7. And that was another one of those challenges, yeah, Saw 7. As if you haven't heard it before. The other new thing was it was a 3D release. So it was very much around how do you, again, create action to an audience where you engage them deeply and you give them this deep experience, but then reach hundreds of thousands of people because our budget is really small. So what we did was, actually I don't have to talk about it, I'll show you.
What began as a short film has seen the Saw franchise become a classic in the horror genre. But how, after 6 releases, do you maintain the audience rage when you get another Saw movie? With a bloodthirsty budget and a murderous deadline, the strategy was to create a micro-activation that, with the help of social media, could punch far above its weight. A Saw 7 photo booth was built in the foyer of a Sydney cinema. Cinemagoers were invited to watch the film's trailer and have their photograph taken. But just as it's about to be taken, they are joined by Jigsaw, the film's main character, all filmed.
If you choose either button on your phone, make sure you're already with the words on the line. Get ready. Get ready. 3, 2, 1.
You have watched others suffer. Unsuspecting photo booth experience into a terrifying viral that has spread across the globe. The Saw movie franchise was successfully reinvigorated ahead of the Saw 7 3D release.
Very simple idea, very small, very simple, but again, it was more like, what can we do to then tell a story and use that and use content to amplify that story beyond what we actually done. And then advertising, I think everyone knows about it, but even here, I think you can think a bit differently about it. This is some work for Queensland Rail, and Queensland Rail has a big issue around near misses. It's basically people crossing around across railway crossings and almost get killed. There's about 700 a year, so it's almost 2 a day where a whole family gets wiped out. So it's actually very serious. The obvious solution would be let's put some outdoor advertising close to those railway crossings, educate people about the implications of that. But what we did was we really tried to create some groundswell for that. So we used Queensland Rail employees to make a statement, a very formal statement about the number that we wanted to reduce. so the 702. I made a very formal commitment to that. The minister was there. More about doing and start thinking about what you can do before you actually start thinking about what you can say. Ideally, I think we make better products. I mean, when you think about it, if you make great products, then you get the bonfire approach quite easy. I think Apple has been very successful with, looks like a bonfire actually, for people to line up and come around and see what's happening around the fire. But usually that's not easy or for us to change those things. So what are some of the other things we can do? I mean, one of the basic things is connect with human truth. What would you want to do? Ask yourself, would I actually do it? Would I care? When you think about it, we do so much work in our industry, half the people, actually probably 90% of the time, people don't actually care. And we still try to get it out. So let's ask yourself, what are the things that are actually lovable? Like the fun theory, Volkswagen, really entertaining, truly creating this mind smile when you see those type of things. Or make things that are useful. I mean, like the field magazine is a very good example. Or work locally. So things like, things that are close by. I mean, the whole local aspect is getting more and more important. And the more you can root ideas into very local, specific areas, the more powerful it gets. So this is a neighborhood, so where people basically swap goods. In exchange goods. The other thing is about inspire people about new possibilities, and that can be done on a really small scale. When you think of car companies now, linking mobile technology to give you an idea of your own behavior. How do you drive your car? How economic do you drive your car? And all that kind of information that you provide, that they provide, just make you aware of certain things that you do. It's actually for a car company a very simple thing, but it can really broaden the horizon, broaden the relationship with the audience. And then obviously connecting people, give people ways to connect in a new way. I mean, Nike Plus, when you think about it, it's been very revolutionary. For those who don't know, Nike Plus is really, it's basically creating a community of runners by using, capturing your data about running and uploading that into a central space and comparing that with other runners. So you basically can run with someone in New York, or you can run against someone in Dubai, and create this whole community of runners. Very, very powerful. And then the other thing is, particularly for the marketers amongst you, don't just buy media. I think when you look at what Red Bull has done, Red Bull is a true experience thinking brand, I would call it. They started with, what can we do? And then let's talk about it. In the early days, they paid for advertising. We remember all the advertising. What they're doing now, more and more, is they're selling content to the people they bought advertising from. They're creating events that they own, they're creating content that they own, and they're selling that content back to TV stations or to paid TV stations, which is quite amazing when you think about it. Brands actually now providing content for the media owners that they used to buy from. I want to finish with something that happened actually, one of our first things that we've done, so it's actually quite old, but I thought it's quite nice, it makes me feel nostalgic. But I think it's a really nice example where experience thinking can actually totally change the outcome of what you thought it is in the first place. And to be honest, it was a bit of a change for us as well. And it was with Mini, we've done well where we were doing. The brief to us was pretty much within a box of 8 by 4 square meters, and it was to create a trade fair stand for Mini and at the motor show. And as you would normally do, you would come up with a solution like this. This is not what we did, but it's a very obvious solution. There's some nice ideas there and all that, and it's all about what could we do? Use the ski lifts, it's a great idea. Let's extend the sort of graphics and do all of that. And you work on that really hard to make this as good as you can. The issue is you start thinking within this particular space, you don't think about the experience. And one of the key things about driving a Mini, and not getting has a Mini, is the actual driving dynamics of this car. If you drive a Mini, you will totally change your views about this car as opposed to a Golf or any other car. So it's a very different driving experience. So what we then did was, okay, how can we actually, number one, capture that? And then the other thing was, when you look at the motor show, none of the Mini customers actually go to the motor show. the motor show is an industry event, but it doesn't actually attract that audience. So we thought, how can we use and leverage the volume and the noise of the motor show, but then use it to our advantage to provide a true experience. So what we did was we invented car bowling, and it was effectively a very simple thing. We hired a car park and we created big bowling pins, and the menu became the bowling balls, and we gave people a driving experience that you can normally not have. So you could jump in the car with a professional race car driver, race around the bowling pins, and get a really good idea in terms of what you can do with this car. Now, the funny thing was, we didn't have to pay to be at the motor show. We managed to get front page of the Sydney Morning Herald to talk about the motor show, although we didn't actually participate in the motor show. And we gave people a driving experience that they could have never had within an 8x4 stand. So when you think about it, if you start thinking about the experience first, the solution might be quite different than we thought it would be in the first place. I will wrap this up quite quickly now. So how can you do it? I think the main thing is ask different questions. Ask first, what can you do? And when I say what can you do, it's kind of like, what can we make? What can we change? What can we improve? How can we inspire people? How can we help people? How can we connect people? Not necessarily what can we say or what should we tell our audience. Focus on the business problem first. When you look at the business problem, it might trigger quite different solutions than that are traditional communication solutions. So really start there first. And then look at shared value. I think we often, we are craftsmen in our own skills, and we often get hung up by that, because we think this is absolutely amazing what we do. But the people we do it for, they might not think that. So often think about how relevant is it, not just for the brain I'm looking for, but also how relevant is it for the people using it. Not just how credible it is from our perspective, but is it actually useful, or is it actually enjoyable, or is it actually really needed? To wrap up,